Run, run! I heard Toby yell from the next aisle. He'd been caught by a security guard. It was a good distraction for me because I had already stolen everything we needed for that night. While everyone else was occupied with Toby, I ran outside and all the way to his small house in the projects. This is where our gang hung out. Yes, I was part of a gang, but I'll tell you more about that later. Before I continue, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you don't miss out on any more stories by hitting that notification bell too. Thanks, you're the best. Toby had been my best friend since we were in preschool. Our grandmas went to the same church, so we met in Sunday school. We had a lot in common. For example, we lived alone with our grandmas. When Toby was 12, his grandma passed away, but he didn't want to go into foster care. So he ran away from the officials whenever they tried to find him. Later, he ended up joining a gang because the guys on the block treated him like family. He dropped out of school and started doing things that no kid should be doing, really. The gang became like his family, and they were practically raising themselves. They all liked to hang out at his house because no one was there to see what was going on. There were no nosy adults. Instead of trying to change Toby's mind or helping him to do something different, I ended up being sucked into that same gang too. Over time, we became very skilled at the worst things. We could steal anything without being caught. Our gang leaders were already in their 20s, and they were involved in more horrible things, which they promised to teach us when we were adults. We were already 17 years old, but they were convinced it was still too early. That night, after I ran away from the supermarket, I waited a few minutes for Toby because I knew he'd show up, and he did. Whoa, that was close, he said as he barged through the door. Yeah, you escaped again though. Here, have a drink. I smiled, handing him a bottle of the grape soda I had stolen. You should probably go home, you have school tomorrow, he said. Yeah, you're right. Although Toby had dropped out of school, I stayed, and he always tried to encourage me to do the right thing. Besides, my grandma would never let me drop out, and I didn't want to be in a gang forever. I had dreams. I wanted to become a kindergarten teacher someday. Most people laughed when I said that because I didn't fit the description at all. I dressed like a tomboy most days. Huge t-shirts, baggy jeans, the coolest kicks, and lots of chains. I swore more than a sailor. But who says tomboys can't be teachers? Anyway, I took Toby's advice and went home. My grandma was already sleeping because it was quite late. The next day, I was extremely happy for no reason. I took the bus to school and smiled at everyone. They looked at me like I was weird. My first class was art. I sat down in my usual spot at the back and waited for Mrs. Harper to walk in. She was the only teacher I got along with at school. Everyone was in class already. Then the door opened and they all went silent. I looked behind me and saw the boy I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. He was so cute. Oh my God, I thought. I waved at him. Hey, are you new here? Sit by me, I said while pushing the person next to me out of their seat. Hi, yeah. It's my first day here, he replied. He looked startled, but he sat next to me. He was short, probably 5'1", had short brown hair and the nerdiest glasses I'd ever seen in my life. They were almost bigger than his face. He was also kind of skinny, and you're probably thinking that this makes no sense, especially after I told you a bit about my personality. But yes, I'm a tomboy who is fatally attracted to nerds, and I had the biggest one I'd ever seen sitting next to me. Why do you go to this school now? I asked. Well, I live with my aunt and she got a new job here, so we had to move. I also heard that the school has a pretty great robotics team. I can't wait to try it out, he said, still sounding a bit scared. Oh my God, he loves nerdy stuff too? I'm in love, I thought to myself. Hey, Patricia found herself a new nerd, said Todd, the class clown. Everyone burst out laughing. Shut up, he is not a nerd. He is awesome, I screamed while staring into his eyes. We had different classes after, but later that day, I found him sitting alone in the cafeteria. I took my tray and sat right next to him. He looked scared again. Look, I'm not a bully or anything. I'm not gonna knock your tray over. Stop acting so scared of me. I'm just trying to help you out on your first day. I laughed. He smiled back and bit a piece of his apple. His teeth were so tiny and cute. I chuckled. Cool. My name is Thomas, by the way, he said. Nice to meet you. I'm Patricia, I replied. The next few weeks went pretty much the same. I followed Thomas around whenever I could. I even joined the robotics club just so I could be around him. We became better friends and he started to open up to me. But I couldn't tell whether or not he was interested in me romantically. It's time to step up my game. But I don't know what to do, I said to Toby one night while we were at his house. The next day I explained to Thomas that I needed help with my math homework because I didn't understand a thing. Sure, I can meet you in the library after school, he said. I don't like the library, I said. What about your house? He said. My dad will kill you, I replied. Okay, well, my house then. He finally decided. My gosh, did he take forever to take a hint? He waited for me after school and we went to his house, which was in a nice area in the suburbs. His house was quite cute too. His aunt wasn't at home, so we had the place to ourselves. We went to the dining room and he began to help me understand a concept, which I already understood. It was fun pretending I was stupid. This continued for a few days and I realized that I was a really good actor. Now, although I am a tomboy, I always expect the guy to make the first move, and he just wasn't doing that. I was confused. Here I was, at his house, making my desires quite obvious, but he just wasn't taking a hint. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. Thomas, I like you, and I think we should go on a date, I said. What? He replied. Don't you get it? I pretended to be confused just so I could spend extra time with you, and although you're so smart, you never bothered to realize that. I nearly screamed. I don't really see you in that way, Patricia. You're not exactly my type, he said timidly while straightening his huge glasses. Well, you're my type and I think you should at least try to like me, I replied. You're making me uncomfortable. Could you please leave? He said. I couldn't believe it. I threw my books into my backpack, got up, walked out the door, and slammed it very loudly. I cried all the way home and I'm sure I looked pretty ridiculous. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I was so angry. After all I had done for that idiot, I will find a way to make him fall for me, I thought. I called Toby. Hey, Thomas really made me sad tonight. I want to get back at him. Will you and the guys help me do something? We can make a lot of money, more than robbing a store. We can kidnap him and ask for a ransom. Anything for you, he said. I explained my plan and he said he'd talk to the guys and get back to me in a while. After a few minutes, he called me back. We're on. They agreed, he said. Great, we'll do it tomorrow. He leaves school around 4 after the robotics club. There's a little alley he walks through that is sort of deserted. We can get him there, I said. The next day I didn't go to school. I spent my day rehearsing my plan. We were going to kidnap Thomas and lock him in a room in Toby's house. Nobody would find out, and my whole crew was upset because they thought he broke my heart. Around 3, I called the guys and they told me it would be better if they handled the kidnapping part alone. They asked me to wait for them at Toby's house, so I did that. I arranged the room where we'd put Thomas. I made sure that the window was locked and that there were a few snacks in the room. I went out to buy a few bottles of water, too. I sat in the room and waited. When it was 4 o'clock, I walked around nervously. At 4:30, no one had come back yet. Did something go wrong? Oh no, I thought. Just then, I heard a loud bang and lots of movement. The door opened and they shoved Thomas inside. What are you doing in here? Toby asked. Nothing, I said. I got up and walked outside. Thomas made eye contact with me, but he was gagged, so he couldn't say anything. You guys are late. What happened? I asked. Well, he was late. And when we finally saw him walking down the alley, he was holding a girl's hand. She looked just like him, short and nerdy too. She had 2 pigtails like a silly child. Gosh, nerds are weird, Toby said. He was walking with a girl? I gasped. He was hiding a whole girlfriend from me. I was angry. You seem jealous, Toby said. Well, of course I am. I'm in love with the guy. I started crying. Patricia? Toby said. What? I replied. You've been so blindly in love with that stupid nerd that you couldn't tell that I've had a crush on you for the longest time? I only agreed to help kidnap Thomas because I thought you wanted to get even with him. I wanted to hurt him because of what he did to you, he said. I froze. I was shocked. Toby? In love with me? Aren't you going to say anything? Did you only ask us to kidnap him so that you could force him to like you? Because I don't think that's how any of this works, he said while looking disappointed because I hadn't said anything. Actually, that's exactly why, I sighed. He left the room and nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen next. He walked back in the room with a bunch of other guys. You involved us in your nonsensical little love story, and now I'm not even sure if we'll get any money from this, one of the leaders said. They grabbed me and pushed me into the room where Thomas was being held captive. What are you doing? I asked. You're going to pay for your stupid behavior, he replied. He left the room and locked the door. So there I was, stuck with Thomas. He was tied and gagged, but my hands were free, so I untied him. I'm sorry, Thomas. For some strange reason, I thought this would have been a good idea, I said. You're completely out of your mind and I hate you. Well, I understand. Who was the girl you were holding hands with this afternoon? My girlfriend. Her name is Olive. Remember when I told you that you weren't my type? Well, she is. She's the total package. I think I'll marry her someday. I was burning with anger and jealousy. Well, you're stuck with me for now. You're not even sure if you'll make it out alive, and you're thinking about marriage? Ugh, I said. The guys left us in that room for 2 days. They'd always throw some water and food inside, so we weren't hungry, but I became extremely miserable. All I did was argue with Thomas, and I was beginning to wonder what I saw in him in the first place. I was sure that my grandma was losing her mind wondering where I was, and Thomas's aunt must have contacted the police by now. I brainstormed all kinds of ideas about how we could escape, but nothing would work. Just as I was about to give up, Gary, one of the gang leaders, opened the door. Listen, the guys have an important message tonight, and we have lots of plans for the week, so it doesn't make sense to keep you here. I'm gonna let you go, but if you tell anyone who we are or what we did to you, I'm gonna hurt you and your families. So make up some story and make it believable. That's a warning, and I'm very serious. Now get lost, he said. We were free! I walked out of the house very quickly and never looked back. I had my crush kidnapped, and it really backfired. I think I ruined my life because I lost the boy I loved, my best friend, and my gang family. I'm not sure how I will recover from this, to be honest. Do you have any advice for me? Please type it in the comments.